Try that again. I'm going to post this just because there's been a lot of questions about how to actually tone the paper. So hopefully this will be helpful to everyone. So today we have a lot we're going to accomplish. We're going to talk about a couple of things first. And I brought with you some of the general supplies that I use. So first off, you need to have a regular t-shirt, just a white t-shirt, cut off a section of it. Ah, awesome, Sam. So that's fantastic. So I just reuse this all the time, and then you're going to want to have a chamois. So the chamois will come into place in just a minute. So whenever I'm doing any kind of demonstration or toning paper, I like to do some type of a test. And I'll experiment a lot with different types of materials. And one of the things that I've played with, I saw a video by David Kassan, and he does just beautiful work. And one of the things that he uses it's called Dreadnought gray paper, and then he'll staple it to the outside of some masonite and then use either coffee or tea to tone the paper. Now, I don't drink coffee, so that's not easily available to me, but I do love toning paper with it because you've got the cool gray of the paper, and then on top of that you've got the warmth of the coffee. I personally haven't used tea before because I understand that it is fairly green in nature, and so I haven't gone to that spectrum. But I do love the warmth of coffee. Now, one time I was working on a drawing for the students that I had toned this way, and one of the students mentioned that coffee has a high acidic content, and I have kind of stopped using it since then. So I don't want it to eventually destroy the content of the paper fibers. So one of the drawbacks of using the staples on the outer edge is that as you draw, you'll catch your hand on the staples. So that's something to be considering. I've used watercolor tape, and I personally don't recommend that because it doesn't have a tendency to seal the paper. So when you're toning your paper for class, I'll show you one method, but these are some other methods. You're going to need some higher quality paper. And my recommendation is that you use either Artistico Fabriano or Stonehenge or Reeves. Those are all really good quality papers. And yes, they are more expensive, but they have a higher rag content, and so they'll accept water, and especially the Artistico will accept water or toning the paper without curling really dramatically. So anytime you do this, you're going to want a test strip. Now the brushes that I use, this is a Royal and Langnickel brush, and I just love the whole brand. My favorite brand is Rosemary Brushes and the Royal and Langnickel. And this is just a watercolor brush. It's 1 inch, and there's different places like Blick. You can purchase these brushes, or you can order Jerry's Artorama, or let's see, where else have I purchased them? Amazon usually has brushes like this on sale. So they're a very inexpensive brush. Now the first type of toning of the paper I'm going to show you, I'm just agitating this, and I'm just stirring up the pigment. I've already made this in advance. This is actually distilled water. Anytime you're going to make something to tone paper, make sure that you use distilled water. The paper itself has how it receives that tone will be also determined by the distilled water. The distilled water doesn't have any of the minerals that other water would have. So this, yes?
A quick question. So the distilled water, is it the same as the filtered water? sorry.
No,
question.
distilled is a different process, and so that's why you want to do that. It's not drinking or culinary water, it's water that you would use for just specific purposes like like,
Like medical stuff?
yeah, like a vaporizer or humidifier in the room. It takes out the minerals so the minerals don't build within the machinery. And it's the best for using for paper, so don't use regular tap water.
Okay.
So-
And where can we buy distilled water?
Oh, any grocery store
Okay.
sells gallons of it.
You can make a milk carton sort of thing.
Yes, it does. It looks like a milk carton. And you just buy one and it's like 79 cents, so. Okay, so this is what the liquid looks like. It's a clear liquid, obviously, and then you can use any type of ink. Now, I've seen artists use colored inks. I personally like just a regular ivory black, or I've used a sepia toned ink as well. And I've used them in combination. So if I want the ivory black and I want just a little bit of warmth to it, then I'll add either burned umber or sepia. So I just, with a dropper, put in the amount of ink that I want. And I stress this because always you're going to want to make sure you dip your brush in and you just lightly test it on a section of the paper that you're going to be using. So this is called an ink dispersion, and I'll just do a small section of it. It is about the value that I want. The value, as far as the value scale that you're looking for, is you're looking for about a value 5. And so that shows you what I'm looking at right here. That's a really beautiful tone of the paper. And one of the advantages of toning your paper in advance is that way you can put your hand to rest your hand on it. You can still add additional tone around the paper, but this makes a value to start with, so it represents the values of your middle values. Yes, Sam?
Are you able to remove value with that method, like to lighten it?
Oh, the tone of the paper probably won't change that dramatically. You can erase on it, and you won't lift it, which would be my greater worry, is that, hey, if I use an eraser, am I going to take the tone off? And it does not. Okay, so that's the ink dispersion. Yes?
If we do want to use like lighter values in our drawing, then we would like use white chalk or white pencil or something like that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Good question. So if you're going to tone your paper, then I recommend the General's white charcoal, and you're just toning your paper, and then you have your range of middle values, and then you're going to highlight with white. Okay, so that's pretty consistent. So yes, you can't take it back to the white of the paper, but you're going to add the white charcoal. Okay? Good questions. All right, next we're going to do a graphite dispersion. And graphite comes already pre-ground, and the brand name is General's. And again, I'm using distilled water, and I'm just agitating that. I put the distilled water in, and then with just a teaspoon, I'm going to add in the powder until and this one tends to settle on the bottom just a little bit more. So this is the graphite dispersion, and this is what it looks like. It just has a higher metal sheen to it. So here we go. Here's the graphite dispersion. Now looking at this is beautiful, but for me, I did this dispersion last spring, just before the start of COVID. I probably would add a little more distilled water, although I like it. Notice how there is a big difference between the cool and the warm. So this is the ink, and this is the graphite. So that's probably just a little bit darker than I would recommend. You want a good value 5 to start with. Okay? So then you just let that dry. And that's all there is to actually doing those dispersions. Now you're going to get some striation. In other words, you're going to get just a little bit of demarcation between the strokes. And that's okay. It doesn't matter that you have that. So next I'm going to show you how to tone your paper here in class. And this is what we'll be consistently using. And we're going to use a method called the reduction method. So in advance, I've sharpened some charcoal. What you're going to be starting with is this reduction method. And when you're sharpening your different charcoal, I tend to just put them all together, and then I keep them in a little jar just so that later on, if I need to, I can have some extra. Okay? So that's really handy. I usually keep that within its own separate plastic bag because the little graphite tends to go everywhere, the charcoal. It just doesn't stay in its container well. Okay, so I've got this pile of charcoal. And what I tend to see is students are pretty reluctant to go through a full stick of charcoal, of vine charcoal, in order to tone their paper, but it really requires it. So you're not going to be able to really do an effective reductive method without a significant amount. So then I get the paper surface and I just sprinkle this artfully around. Now I've seen some instructors even here at Salt Lake Community College that will take the side of charcoal and just tone it with one of their shards. And I do not like that method at all. First off, it embeds the charcoal deeply into the surface. So then you have a problem when you try to lift it. So I wouldn't recommend that. And you can see I use a little Altoid box. I had a student ask me Monday, well, what do you store this in? And when I break a charcoal stick, I'll store it in a little Altoid box. You get fresh breath and you get a little box. So that's pretty fun to be able to have that little tin. Okay, so you can see that I've just sprinkled this down on the paper surface. And then don't use your chamois. Please don't use paper towel from the classroom. It's just too rough. I do like the paper towel that's coming out of the box to clean your, I tried that, it works really well. But what I want is a t-shirt, and I just cut it up into a square. I've had this for years. And what you're going to do is you're going to wipe that surface in a single direction, like so, okay? So you first go vertical, and then you're going to come down across the paper and swipe that horizontally. You can see that just does such a beautiful surface. And I don't want to embed that deeply into the paper. If there's areas that I get just a little bit of striation, I can go back and correct it. But don't be afraid of it at all. This is a good value 5. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for the paper surface. And now we're going to do what's called the reduction. So here we have our t-shirt. Now we're done with the t-shirt for the time being. We only use that to tone our paper. Now with the reductive method, you're going to, yes, Sam?
So if anybody didn't bring a t-shirt today, I have brought a whole t-shirt right up.
Oh, that's so kind. So we'll take you up on that. That's awesome. And if anybody needs some extra charcoal, there's some extra. Okay, so now when you do the drawing on top of this, what you try to do is you keep your hand out of it, so to the best of your ability. Sometimes you can't help it, you're going to rest on it, but I love those marks. They individualize your entire drawing. So the next stage after you do your drawing, and yes, you use vine charcoal. So my favorite vine charcoal you know I'm a big proponent of it, and I do not sell for it. One of the students noticed that my apron, no, this is the Utrecht one, but I have one that's Neutrum. And these are the types of Neutrum that I use. This is a hard, and then I don't have the green one out, but the green is like an HB, and then this is a B, and this is an extra soft. And a student of mine in the 2260 actually recommended this yellow, and I've been using it this semester and I love it. It's a really soft vine charcoal. So all of this is vine. The charcoal that you have for the Winsor Newton, it's a good basic kind of generic charcoal, but if you put your hand on it or blow it on it, it's gone. And so after you make sure you get your proportions correct, your overall drawing, your composition, then you have to, if you use the Winsor Newton, you have to trade to the General's compressed charcoal. Now the General's compressed charcoal comes in different grades, just like any other pencil. It comes in medium, soft, extra soft, which is extra soft is 6B, soft is 4B, and then you can purchase a hard. So all of those you're going to sharpen the exact same way I've showed you how to sharpen. That's the General's charcoal. Now this is man-made, where this is manufactured, where this is just a process where anciently the artists had a working relationship with bakers. And those bakers, after they were through baking for the day, they would allow artists to come in. They would take a terracotta vessel with an end cap that's screwed on. They would pack it with sticks, and then the coals that the bakers would use, they would put that in the embers, and by morning they'd have vine charcoal. Now fortunately we don't have to make all of our materials. That's a big advantage to us. We can just get them out of our tackle box and we're ready to go. But artists in the past didn't have that luxury. So after you've done this drawing, then you're going to start your value study, or No 10. You're going to develop where is your form shadow edge, where is your cast shadow, and you're going to remove the light zone. So with your chamois this time, just insert your finger into the center of it, and then you're going to pull out your light zone. Okay, so right now you've got what is in light, what is in shadow. And you've got just that basic information. Does everyone see that? Okay, so that takes us back nearly to the white of the paper. Once we get into highlight, we can take out more with a kneaded eraser. But that's pretty good. That's almost the white of the paper right there. And I like that value to start with. Classically, the amount of light compared to shadow is about 2/3 light to 1/3 shadow. Although, interesting enough, we really tend to work just in shadow to begin with. So then we're going to refine our form shadow edge here. And we're going to come at it obliquely and at a 45 and just enhance that. So we're starting out with this big flat plane in here that gives you the reflected light, and you're going to add more reflected light by enhancing or deepening the value of the form shadow edge, or aka the terminator. Okay, any questions about how to tone paper?